Of the issues that are facing Congress, the most critical is that ticking clock pushing the economy close to the so-called fiscal cliff. What culpability, if any, does this Congress have in putting the U.S. economy in such a state of uncertainty?
We have a responsibility to make sure we don't go over it. And the best way to make sure that we don't go over it is to follow the deficit reduction plan, 10-year plan, put forth by the Bowles-Simpson Deficit Commission. And it's basically $4 to $5 trillion over 10 years. For every $1 on the revenue side, $3 on the spending side. And the revenues, we wouldn't raise taxes, but actually we'd actually lower the tax brackets, and we would broaden the base on income that is taxable. Everything's on the table. Entitlement programs, Democrats have to agree to make some compromises, reforms on entitlement programs. Republicans have to agree to make some reforms on taxes that generate some additional revenues.
The people who led us into this financial abyss will have no ability to lead us out of this financial abyss. I started a business on my kitchen table 30 years ago. I've had to balance a budget every month for 30 years. I've had to make the tough decisions. I run a specialty engineering business that requires that I solve the toughest problems put before me by my customers around this country and around the world. We need to bring common sense to Washington. That's what we lack.
We're in a hole and sinking with trillion-dollar deficit. GM and Chrysler are about to go under. The bank's in trouble. That's where we were. That's where we were 4 years ago. Can we do better than that? Sure we can. And the way we'll do that is to make sure we invest in those three things that you'll hear me say again and again tonight. Number one, invest in a world-class workforce. Number two, invest in modern transportation infrastructure. Number three, invest in technologies that will provide for jobs through new goods, new services, and so forth that we'll create from those technologies, sell them all over the world. That's what we need to do.
We've had debt for 175 years. We had debt after World War II. We've always had debt. It's not going away. That's the way we live. For these people to talk about, even when we had balanced budgets under President Clinton for a couple of years, we still had huge national debt, and it's going to continue. Let's face it, between now and January, the Senate, the Congress, they're going to meet, they're going to extend the tax cuts. To act like they're not going to is just folly. The biggest problem is this: we spend far too much. We've got 2 wars we haven't paid for. We waste money abroad. Let's end the wars, and that's a first big start towards paying as we go.
Put people back to work. People who have work will have better jobs. People who have better jobs will get overtime. People who work on Saturday will be able to keep what they've earned if we overhaul this tax code.
I agree with Kevin. We need to overhaul the tax code. And our friends, Simpson-Bowles and Alan Simpson and the Commission, what they've said, we should lower tax rates, top rate down from 35 to 28% for individuals and for businesses. They said we should broaden the amount of income that can be taxed. We need to incentivize the investment in technologies that can be commercialized and turned into goods and services and products that we can sell around the world. And we need to work very, very hard to knock down trade barriers so that the technologies and the products that we do develop, we can sell into countries from not just Korea, Colombia, and Panama, but a lot of other countries as well.
Have you ever heard of the Carper Bill or the Carper Act or anything in this country in the last 36 years that had Tom's name to it? Tom is not a leader. He's a follower. He's the water boy for the corporate banks.
Mr. Carper, Mr. Pires has charged that you support privatizing Social Security. Do you support privatization of this program? Do you support other changes to Social Security that would affect the benefits?
Yeah, that's hogwash, pure and simple. When George Bush proposed doing this, a group of us wrote to him in 2004, again in 2005, said, bad idea, don't try to do it. 2006, I voted against it. 2007, I voted against it again. We prevailed in both of those votes. It's just hogwash.
This is Tom Carper in 2005. I don't rule at some point having private accounts for Social Security. That's you, Tom. That's a quote. 2004, let me finish. This is Tom Carper talking with Mr. Bush about working together to have private accounts. Quote, I'll meet him halfway, November 23rd, 2004. There's another article in the Orlando Centennial talking about Thomas Carper saying he's trying to work together to have a system in which we can have private accounts. That's in November 2004. There's 3 examples.
If Alex will actually dig into this a little bit, what he'll find out is that I said, I want to keep the guaranteed benefit for Social Security. If people would like to have an add-on benefit, a private account, in addition to what is offered by Social Security, they could have that. I'm not opposed to doing that. But the idea is not to do that in a way that undermines traditional Social Security. That's what I said.
You mentioned in your statement that we had some easy steps to take. Well, Senator, why didn't we take those easy steps last year for Social Security, or 2 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago?
Starting in 2033, we're going to have to begin reducing the amount of Social Security payments. Why wait till 2033 to fix it? We can do 3 or 4 simple things now.
40 cents of every dollar that Washington spends this year is borrowed money, and that includes Social Security. 40, not 14, not 4, 40 cents of every dollar in federal spending is borrowed money.
If Tom Carper is emotionally and mentally healthy, he would end it by putting his health records out, and he won't.
You can check our campaign website. There's a letter there from the Navy doc who for a number of years is giving my physical every year that says, this is the kind of shape this guy's in, these are the medicines that he takes, and he is doing just fine. And so I would invite you to take a look at that. He says that Delaware is the most corrupt state and that I'm the most corrupt U.S. senator that we have in the country. He says Delaware is a second-class state. I'm so proud of this state. I can't tell you, but I will. This is a state that went from the worst credit rating in the country when I was elected state treasurer, and when I was governor, best credit rating. This is a state that has the highest regard for our judiciary of any state in the nation. We recognize year after year after year. This is a state that has some of the best beaches, 2 out of the best 4 beaches in America. This is a state that has world-class beaches. This is a state where so many companies want to incorporate from all over the world. We're the choice of incorporations. This is a state that has built an excellent environment for job creation. And this is a state, as I said earlier, for the last 19 years, 3 states lead the pack in terms of academic improvement. I helped on every one of those, and I am proud of that.
I grew up in a row house in Pennsylvania. We were poor. I mean, poor. I went to work in a steel mill 3 days after high school, and I dodged the hot steel and I earned a man's paycheck. And I began to go to college when I wasn't in that mill. I came here a couple of years later, and every good thing in my life has happened in Delaware. I don't sweat the small stuff, but I love my grandchildren, and I refuse to see this country broke and bankrupt at the hands of professional politicians in Washington. The best people in this country are not in Washington. They live on your street. They sit across the lunch table from you. They're everyday Americans, and it's time for all of us, we the people, to go to Washington to do the hard work that should have been done years ago. But it needs to be done now, not for Republicans, not for Democrats, but for our children and our grandchildren. Nothing bothers me from these 2 people.
I represent the people that no one wants to represent. Johnny Cochran wouldn't take the black farmers case. I wrote the complaint myself. I traveled the country for years with J.L. Chestnut, who represented Martin Luther King, and I won the black farmers case. My way, the rough way, the tough way, over $1 billion. Won the women's case, the Native American case, the tobacco farmers case. And through all that, you get beat up and made fun of and insulted, and they came to my house and break my windows, and all the things that happened. What I learned from it is, in the end, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that you try very hard to inspire others to do for those people who can't do for themselves.